I just got a call from someone named John. And when I answered the phone, it was like, hey, this is John from the CIA. And as an immigrant, right, you kind of quickly think about how that sounds, and you're like, okay, you probably did something wrong, and you don't even realize it. So it ends up being, and it was finals exam, so it was super stressful how to respond to that. But long story short, it was actually pretty good. They were like, look, we just found your transcripts and background pretty interesting because you're multilingual and you're studying computer science and economics. It's worth the conversation. We're going to be around the New Jersey, New York area, and why don't you come meet us at this campus at this time? And then if you want to get anything validated, go talk to your computer science professor the next day, and he'll validate this meeting for you. So that's how it got started.
Welcome to Partner Path, a podcast that unpacks the venture capital and growth equity ecosystem from a junior perspective. Young entrepreneurs and investors have already had a massive impact on the industry, having started unicorns and launched billion-dollar funds. We discuss these success stories and more by sharing perspectives and advice from some of the industry's most prominent role models.
Joining us this week is Kartik Chopra, the CEO and founder of Devron. Originally from northern India, Kartik moved to the United States at the age of 11 and studied computer science at Rutgers University. With a career primarily focused on financial intelligence and distributed computing and the CIA, Kartik developed an innovative AI solution for analyzing slow-motion videos while working overseas. In 2020, Kartik left the CIA and founded Devron, a data science and machine learning platform designed for distributed data. Welcome, Kartik.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thanks for the introduction, and great to see you as well.
So let's start with your childhood. What was your childhood like, and when did your interest in computer science start?
Childhood was great. I was a huge fan of math and computers when I was young. Before we immigrated to America, I was often found in my dad's office, just kind of running around working with all the computers that he had. He was a senior hydrogeologist for the Indian government and just spent a lot of time living and working around computers, and was a super fan of playing video games on there and actually being a little bit more around like the coding languages that he was familiar with at the time. This was back in obviously early 1980s, 1990s.
And then fast forward, you moved to the United States at age 11. And I'm assuming you moved to New Jersey because you went to Rutgers University?
That's correct. Yep, we did our first landing in New Jersey right after a little bit after 9/11.
And while at Rutgers, you got a random call from someone in the CIA. And what was your initial thought? I mean, why did the CIA call you out of the blue?
As a freshman, sophomore in college, right, you're already thinking about where your internships are going to be, where you're going to work, how are you going to kind of think about a job scene as you're pursuing your college career. So as a freshman, I kind of applied to every organization I possibly could across like a few months. And so I applied across the U.S. government intelligence agency as well. Did the application for the CIA, did the application for the NSA. And 2 years later, I was sitting in Kilmer, which is a library in Livingston campus at Rutgers. And I just got a call from someone named John. And when I answered the phone, it was like, hey, this is John from the CIA. And as an immigrant, right, you kind of quickly think about how that sounds, and you're like, okay, you probably did something wrong, and you don't even realize it. So it ends up being, and it was finals exam, so it was super stressful how to respond to that. But long story short, it was actually pretty good. They were like, look, we just found your transcripts and background pretty interesting because you're multilingual and you're studying computer science and economics. It's worth the conversation. We're going to be around the New Jersey, New York area, and why don't you come meet us at this campus at this time? And then if you want to get anything validated, go talk to your computer science professor the next day, and he'll validate this meeting for you. So that's how it got started. It was a pretty lengthy process from there, but that's how I validated what I was doing.
You worked a few jobs while in the CIA. So what were your responsibilities?
The responsibilities comes in two categories. One, which was my actual role, which is a TIO. It's a technical intelligence officer, which is someone who bridges the gap between a case officer, which are people in the field that are collecting foreign intelligence for the U.S. government, and a software engineer is someone who's trying to bridge the gap with how we communicate with our technical assets for someone that's a case officer that's not actually that technically acumen about how to pursue a specific company or a specific organization based on the foreign intelligence interests for that country. That was one category of my role, which allowed me to kind of really understand how to position technology in front of the right people and the right persona to then make them understand the value of that technology for various different types of business use cases that they were pursuing. And the second role was in the category of just a technical advisor to a lot of senior leaders in the organization that were managing and leading different cyber or AI or kind of forensics projects. And I was kind of, that allowed me to dabble into various different technologies and then obviously come up with something myself.
So how did you develop the technical expertise? Was it in college or when you joined the CIA, if they were turning to you?
I was a nerd when I was not working during the day, right? So I spent a lot of time reading research papers. I was super, super, super interested in machine learning and the art of data science. When I remember when TensorFlow 0.0.2 was being launched, which is back in like the 2013 or 14, it was very simple for me to grasp the technology, figure out the potential of how to build machine learning and neural network algorithms, and just ended up building a lot of projects on the side myself, right? I was dabbling into computer vision, dabbled a lot into natural language processing, and that kind of helped me keep up with this space pretty closely and then helped me kind of build a good foundation in that space.
And so you ended up building Devron or a similar solution in the CIA. When did you think about transferring it from the CIA to more of an enterprise SaaS solution and spinning out?
Yeah, so it wasn't that similar as it is obviously now commercially that we're building software. The main problem that I actually solved for the CIA was how do we not have to worry about taking large amounts of data that we collect globally and kind of centralize it into one place, right? It was very difficult for an organization that big to share data and then with our foreign partners and our allies. And what I did is I just brought the compute wherever we were collecting the data, right? So we have various different kinds of collections of the world, and that allowed us to bring compute and a lot of cloud-based technologies to our data collection pipelines, and then really brought the analytics to the data. And that really sparked a lot of interest and consumption across the technical community of the space, which really helped me build the idea upon like, hey, why can't all of data science be like this across commercial enterprise organizations as well as government? That's what fundamentally led me to believe that there's a data science platform that's required to be built in the space.
And that was in 2020. So were you hesitant to start a company in a global pandemic?
The funny thing is, I didn't know we were going through a global pandemic because this was March 14th, obviously New York shut down in 2020. It wasn't pretty clear for me what's going to happen around the world. And I definitely knew that I wanted to leave the government space and spin up something myself. And as I kind of kept pursuing that route, it was a journey had already started. So it was going to take me a really long time for me to kind of stop what I'm doing and, for lack of better words, be scared of what's going to happen next. I started a journey and I just kept running that to ground. And a few months later, left the organization, started and spun out the company and over the summer and raised capital from there.
And then if we could just touch a little bit more about the product specifically and what pain point it's solving for customers, maybe touch on federated machine learning and your strategy there, and then also the Devron satellite.
The platform, it's a data science and machine learning platform that solves three very specific problems for an enterprise organization. Number one is it allows an organization to keep their data in their specific cloud or multi-cloud environment and enabling them to derive insights from that without moving it across clouds. Number two is it allows you to actually preserve privacy and gives a data owner and a data producer access to create privacy controls in the data to maintain a lot of privacy boundaries, rules before a data set is being used for data science purposes. And number three is getting you access to a lot more data about your customers, and you're able to share this data with your partners and potentially even monetize it without actually moving that raw data across those boundaries. And that platform underneath the hood uses algorithms that are related to federated machine learning, but it's really built now 3 years later, it's built a broad spectrum of capabilities, which allows you to build various different types of fine tuning and transfer learning based algorithms that are being used across various disparate data sets.
And just to confirm, the end user here would be a data scientist, or is there a citizen facing tool? Or
the end user is a data scientist. Right now, we have early beta users for our low-code solution as well, which is a little bit more of a non-technical audience, but our focus remains to be on the data science community.
And what is the relationship that you believe Devron has with larger platforms like Databricks and other machine learning platforms? Why is this something that those types of platforms aren't able to tackle?
We have a very strong interaction with the warehouses and the lakehouse community because we interact with those data holdings across our enterprise customers so much. And it's because what's really happening is if you look at an enterprise Fortune 500 company today, they're dealing with multiple warehouses, lakehouses, database record at the same time. Organizations sometimes even have a Snowflake and a Databricks in the same place. So what we've really done is we wanted to be the warehouse agnostic, lake agnostic solution for a CIO or head of technology or data science element that allows them to get access to all the federated data nodes without the need to continuously move data around for machine learning purposes. The solutions are actually trying to build their own capability for this as well, like Databricks has Delta sharing and Snowflake has clean rooms. So they've thought about this problem a little bit in their own way, but it's specific to their technology. I think they're going to continue investing this and making a lot of investments around making this a little bit more agnostic for themselves as well, or just trying to capture more and more data sets in their own holdings. But we wanted to position ourselves a little bit differently so that we are just leveraging various data sources for a user to get activated very quickly.
Understood. And Just would love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on the differentiation of the platform. Is the hook really on the data protection side of things or the usability? Just elaborating on that would be helpful.
The differentiation is really us being ability for us to do this in a multi-cloud way. What does that mean? That means if you as a user, as a data science team onboard in your AWS environment, but some of your data sits in Google Cloud or in Azure, you can actually keep your data where it sits in those three different cloud environments and then federate an algorithm to be sent out to those environments, train on very disparate data sources, and then bring the results back into one place. So that differentiation allows us to be a specific leader in that space that a lot of now organizations are thinking about their multi-cloud strategy. We can be embedded very, very easily and very quickly as a software provider.
Would love to hear a little bit more about your experience raising venture money. I know you guys raised Series A. Talk to us about the environment around that time that you raised and how you approached the idea of the raise itself.
The environment there was very, I wouldn't say uncertain. Like organizations, obviously every human being at the time was trying to figure out what's going on in life and around the community, wherever they were contributing to. The fundraising, community was still pretty active. And it's frankly, it was very much more certain about their investments and about the market trends they were in back then in 2020 than they are now. A lot of the noise around how AI can be used and kind of productized in the enterprise space, investors are a little bit more hesitant now to look at an AI company and think about what problem you're going to solve, just because of the potential. Is this just going to be a small gimmick for 3 months, or is this actually going to be a proper enterprise software company that we're going to build? Back then, they were a little bit more certain, like, look, okay, you're going to go solve these set of problems first, then that's going to compound into these problems, and that's how what your go-to-market could be and the kind of market you're going to go capture.
And what were you looking for in finding your right VC partner?
I'll be honest, it was the first time I've ever fundraised or I was raising money or even had to learn anything about venture capital. I think the way I had to learn about venture capital was that you need money to hire people to solve a problem for your customers, because you can't get the customers to pay you enough or fast enough to do that. There was debt financing and other ways to instrument financing, but I was like, look, let's raise some capital and go it this way. Having a person around you, because I was a solo founder at the time, so having a person around you that has seen the play at least a few dozen times and actually seen the company grow from 0 to 1 to 10 was exactly kind of what I was looking for, and someone in enterprise software that has been around AI or analytics products, because the buying intent of an enterprise organization is very different when you're trying to sell software with these kind of capabilities.
And what has your experience been working with your existing investors?
We had a pretty good journey to raise capital so far, and we've done about 2 rounds of financing in just a little over 2 years. It was very evident for us how important the voice of everyone is in the board, because there's investors that are from the West Coast and from the East Coast, and their style of investing and communicating to a founder at each board meeting was very unique, right? So having these kinds of perspectives around you, and I think a job of a founder at this stage, in many stages of their life, is to continue to hear the board and continue to get as much data as you can to make specific decisions, but you really have to be able to filter. Having unique perspectives on the board has been always exciting for us, and just having support at everything that I want to do has always been fairly good as well.
And how has Devron scaled since raising your most recent round of financing? Curious to hear what roadblocks you run into and where the team has excelled.
The team is right around 20 people now from a staff perspective, and we have some nearshore and offshore people supporting us from marketing and product as well. Even being an AI company in this space for 3 years now, this year has been a little bit distracting, because even enterprise buyers and people that are current champions are a little bit more, they themselves are being tasked to look at ways to obviously embed Gen AI in their use cases and workflows, every AI company, and be like, look, what can you do for us? What can you do in the AI space for us? Obviously, something that we have stepped up to the plate to deliver on, which is to build language models for our customers or enable them to do so using data that's federated across the enterprise. It was a very quick, rapid fire thing that we had to do across the team, which is like, look, guys, we're down this journey to build a data science platform. All of our customers are asking for one specific thing on how to do this on our platform. Let's put our energy there instead of the rest of the vertical use cases we were building in computer vision and tabular data analysis and time series data sets as well. Let's kind of bring our expertise in the federated world to large language models as well. And that small enhancement in our go-to-market has allowed us to kind of really work well with our customers.
On that, how would you say the platform has evolved over time, where your focus area has been more recently, and how customers helped you prioritize?
The best way to say this is our language model API framework has become a lot more robust. We have to just put a lot more focus and attention on this. Before we were, as a small team across like 7 or 8 customers, we were bifurcated around which kind of use cases we should focus on for our machine learning APIs. Like I said, which were like from time series to computer vision to smaller, not document-based, but more word-based, text-based algorithms. And now that our focus is just straight large text corpuses, it's made our federated learning APIs a little bit more robust around that, which has been a good small software enhancement that we've had to make in the product.
That's probably a good transition into learning about your sales cycles and customers. To clarify, you're selling into enterprise and government customers. And so, what are the key differences between those two types of customers?
The beauty is that they're completely different. An early founder, I remember I was speaking to a lot of investors and trying to tell them how similar the space is when you're selling to a commercial company versus selling to a government enterprise, government organization. It's really important to understand the government software acquisition process and how it differs from the commercial acquisition process. There was a lot of noise back then also, again, how CBERs work and how early gov contracting works and how do you get on a prime contract versus not. And versus going the commercial enterprise route, which is let's just make sure there's an MSA in place that allows them, the whole organization, to procure software very quickly from Devron. So the short really is you have to have a lot of your T dots, I's dotted, and the government contracting world requires clearances. It requires you to have a specific set of requirements to just be able to even communicate with a classified organization. My job was to find the fastest way to get revenue and get the product used as quickly as possible, right? So I was able to kind of simplify the process for our team and our board and obviously our partners to get to revenue as quickly as we can.
So, do you have any best practices then when you're building relationships with the enterprise and government customers?
It's really important to get an indication of a budget, what you think is a potential buyer or not, as quickly as possible. You can very easily fall down the trap of just having really good conversations because your technology sounds cool and the champion wants to just get educated and they want to send you across their friends and across their network because, like, oh, look at this team, look at this new technology that they're building. And you can really get caught up in that as a sales process. That's not a sales process. That's you just meeting people, right? And a proper sales process requires you to get an indication of value, an indication of a budget and a commitment as soon as possible. This is, I would say, it's a similar approach across any vertical of something that you're selling into. Getting a brand chief or a government operator that has worked in Afghanistan for 10 years and now is leading a massive branch that wants to deploy an AI, it's important for you to quickly be able to say, look, what is your budget looking like for this year, for this fiscal year going into next? Is AI a requirement for you that you have to fulfill from what Congress has provided to you? And having these specific conversations is important for you to actually pursue that sale. Similarly, in the commercial sector, budgets are also obviously approved yearly in advance, but it's important for you to be embedded into a key workflow and getting that indication from the buyer that, look, there's some funds behind this that we're willing to put to work.
And it sounds like that you're still talking in first person regarding the sales cycle. So I'm curious, after raising a few rounds of funding, building out a sales team, was there a moment when you started to transition from all founder-led sales to relying on your sales team or your head of sales?
We have delegated some of these learnings to another member of our team as well. At the same time, I think we're very small for me to step away more than I currently am on these kinds of efforts, just because it's not like we're sticking to one industry. We're only going to stick to financial services. So that way, everything is a little bit more like clockwork. We know what kind of people we need to hire, what the use case is, how the budget's being procured, and how the software is being used. Because we need to be cross-industry, I need to get up to speed on how we're working with an energy company, how we're working with an insurance company, how we're working with a DoD company versus an intelligence organization. It does require me to be pretty involved and get up to speed on various different sales processes and various different industries pursue software until we actually feel like we can completely get the software being used a very similar way across all of these industries. We'll have to be pretty closely involved throughout the process.
That's fair. And kind of related to these industries, can you just touch on like any trends you're seeing in machine learning that are really exciting you?
I think there's a trend happening in database technologies where databases are building native machine learning algorithms and frameworks inside of their database so that data does not have to leave the warehouse or that specific data source. I think is a very impactful way the organization is looking at machine learning models. Because what they're finally doing now is, look, RDS, the relational database service for AWS, they are on the roadmap to build an internal native ML infrastructure that says if you want to train a neural network or an XGBoost or some sort of decision tree algorithm, the data will remain in RDS and you don't have to move it to a flat file storage or an S3 bucket, which obviously there's cost of data, price, and time associated to that. And I think the super exciting thing that's happening here is that a lot of database technologies are doing this, including relational and non-relational data sources. It obviously is going to hurt various other AI tooling and infrastructure product companies, but I think it's going to get enterprise buyers and enterprise data science teams a lot of value from their data because they're not going to have to do a lot of data engineering to move that data out into a data science product to be able to do then machine learning on that whole technology. So I'm closely monitoring that space, and it's hard to contribute to that space as an outsider because you have to be in that company as a software developer or product manager actually to contribute to that space. But it's something to very closely watch and something that could be producing a lot of value soon, if not already.
And if you put the hat of an enterprise CTO on, just looking at the overall tech stack within data science and machine learning, what areas do you think will be dominated by the lakehouse providers? And where do you think there is room for startups and third parties?
Snowflake did this recently, which is good. They launched Snowpark as part of their database product because Snowflake is a database technology. They launched a machine learning workbench for them to compete with, obviously, companies like Databricks that also have a machine learning offering across a lakehouse approach. And I think for them to be able to continue launching more machine learning capabilities on top of their data source, the database technology, is really important because, as wearing the CTO hat, the least amount of software I need to keep purchasing to continue to get my business outcomes and value from the data that we are currently using, probably my number one motto. Maybe that means that the ML companies are coming through the distribution channels of these companies, of these big warehouse and lakehouse technologies, allowing them to actually be used or create small efficiency in the bigger warehouse and lakehouse ecosystem. I wouldn't say those would be potentially billion-dollar companies. I think those would be more so small acquisitions that these larger companies would keep making. I'd probably mix both of my hats there as a vendor and as a CTO in that answer. I would look into limiting the types of software that I'm continuing to purchase for various different use cases and trying to really depend on one or two massive products and invest in them for these kinds of things.
And I guess putting your investor hat on, looking at machine learning platforms, where do you think VC should be spending time?
I think machine learning platforms that, I hate to, but that are really teeing up specific key business problems that they're solving instead of just being infrastructure or tooling companies is where I would put my attention. Because those days are, in my opinion, gone where someone's building a net new ML infra product or an ML tooling product because the big cloud providers and larger data science platforms are pretty well embedded into the enterprise space already and are offering things pretty easily to these consumers to be able to use and build machine learning value from them. From an investor's perspective, I think if a company's solving underwriting using interesting infrastructure, insurance underwriting specifically, using claims data or any sort of other data sources using not just a machine learning model, but a lot of ML ops tooling around it and associated to how data is moved across their vendors and all these space. That is a very repeatable software solution where you kind of obfuscate the ML infra behind it. So solving for a specific key business problem where the ML tooling infrastructure is a uniqueness behind it is something I would probably more actively look into investing in.
And related to your point earlier that I think some investors are focused on not backing something that's a 3-month stint or can be replaced easily. What should investors look for in these platforms or products that show a sense of durability over time?
I'm in the mindset right now that if someone is an early stage or pre-seed investor, you can just put as little as like $200,000 to $300,000 to work and get that answer very quickly with a software team that's coming to you with a new Gen AI idea. Because what that really means is if this team can execute and get out of this 3 to 6 month gimmick timeline of getting the software used and be embedded into a production workflow of a business with just $250,000, that is a company that's worth investing and doubling down in and doing a proper $2 to $3 million seed round. If the founding team is hiring 3 engineers, 4 engineers to build something very small and embedding into a customer's workflow and finding a few consistent workflows like this with their customers, it doesn't have to be industry agnostic or none of that stuff. Just how many paying customers have you been able to do this for with $250,000? And, as managing a fund of maybe even $30 to $50 million, you could do that 10 times a year and then figure out, okay, this is what customers are buying. And these are one of the companies that actually we should invest $3 million extra into so that we can make sure that they can actually get to higher in the funnel of the enterprise tech stack and get into production and get a workflow being used using the Gen AI approach, right? And then they can hire more engineers, they can hire more product managers, hire a sales team to build and expand a platform instead of just a product. You just don't need a lot of money for some of these software workflows to build just because of how software is suffers like how all the open source tooling that's out there in the public now.
Devron's technology enables cross-organizational solutions. However, there's always new legal and regulatory complexities. So I'm curious, in some of these larger enterprise accounts, how does Devron navigate the challenges and ensure compliance in some of these regulatory environments with data sharing?
What we've proven to a lot of privacy, legal, and compliance teams for our customers is that data does not leave the compliant environment. Our construct for Devron is there's a control center and then there's a satellite. Control center is a central hub where data science or data team onboards to starts to perform analysis on the federated nodes. The federated node is what's a satellite. We make it crystal clear and we have a privacy posture in place for this when there's compliance involved to make sure that your data that has PII, that has consumer information, that has confidential information for your business is remaining in that environment. But the algorithms that are leaving that environment after they're trained or have done some sort of pre-processing in it, the artifacts that are leaving are securely preserved in the control center. And there's no privacy being leaked in the artifacts. And there's a posture in place for you to buy into and invest more dollars into this. So it's really how our software construct is built and what we call privacy by workflow, not just by privacy by design, that enables various different layers of privacy to make sure that their organization remains compliant throughout their workflow.
Taking more of a macro view, the regulatory environment still figuring out laws around AI. California has an act. There's a general data protection regulation, which applies to EU and European economic areas. So in your opinion, I guess, what are some of the key challenges from the regulatory environment around figuring out laws with data and AI?
The challenges are worse this year than they were even last year. There's even the American Data Privacy Act that Congress is pursuing here in America. A lot of the laws are really focusing on how to classify a data set a specific way and less focused on how an algorithm uses that data. But now they're going to have to focus on both because now an algorithm is using data in a very specific and unique way because it's learning on so much of it and has so much context that it contains. And it's not just how a data set was classified before and how it was used for an AI project. So a lot of regulations need to put a little bit more emphasis on AI algorithm and the risks associated to it, perhaps by looking into trusted and safety layers around that, because there's enough privacy technologies that actually preserve privacy and make sure that these things are not being leaked. The research is also pretty noisy, I would say. There's just very new innovative things that are coming out and things like differential privacy and federated machine learning and things like encryption. And the laws need to be looking at these technologies very individually because platforms and software solutions are being built by all of them at once, and it's hard to regulate that.
And what do you think the implications of generative AI will be on consumer sentiment towards data privacy?
Apple has a very strong control on these things still, and frankly, they're probably going to double down and control it even more now after they did that with the ad identifier IDs last year. It's very noisy from a consumer perspective as well. I don't think they're realizing how much data they've already given in the last decade to these organizations without thinking much of it or without caring enough about it. And now just because there's more Wall Street Journal articles about it doesn't mean that they should care more. It's too late. That's my personal opinion, right? It's too late. And things like very specific things like what Apple is doing and perhaps even Google is thinking about soon, because they just have so much of the market share for how consumers interact with our phones and mobile browsers, they will be the only kinds of organizations, and perhaps now even Microsoft, given their investments in consumer products, to make a dent in how the consumer sentiment could look like and consumers could be more happy using these products. I'll be honest, whenever I look at a mobile application on Apple and I'm getting the notification about if I should allow or not allow for that app to track me, I'm very happy to see that because I could always say, no, I don't want this app to track me anymore. Unfortunately, but fortunately, only these big organizations can continue to make a dent and prevent more private data from being stored in their servers. And I think, frankly, they need to double down on that idea.
Very helpful. And so to wrap the episode, we would like to ask two questions. The first is, what motivates you to work hard?
Simply said, generational wealth. The idea for people to be able to hopefully one day wake up and not have to raise capital to invest in my own ideas. Just be able to try things out myself and pick and choose specific problems that I want to invest and solve, and then hire the right team for it, and then follow the progress and be very close to the progress as I'm building upon it. Pretty far from that day, but the journey's got to start somewhere, right?
Almost an Elon Musk approach.
Yeah, it's good to know. I haven't heard him say that, but maybe he stole one of my ideas, but it could be wrong.
And then what's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
Continue to be impatient. More often than not, it's gotten me in trouble. But when I look at my younger self, impatience is the only reason why it made me take the risk, jump out, try things that I no one in my family has never done, or it's good to get an answer sooner than later about an idea that I have or a decision I want to make, just because I'm so impatient about getting it. So it's just good to know, like, no, Karthik, this is not going to work. This client is not going to buy this. Stop chasing them down. Or this client is actually pursuing fast because of specific questions. And impatience is actually sometimes a good thing because it gets you to have more no's than yeses, which kind of helps you navigate where you need to be going.
Very interesting. Well, Kartik, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your thoughts and advice. It was very thought-provoking and appreciate you taking the time.
For sure. Well, Laura, thank you very much for this opportunity, and really exciting to see where your efforts are going now, and I'm glad to be part of the journey.